Aishi Hanim, now elderly, shared memories of her childhood in our small district, where life was filled with a quiet contentment, despite the weight of history. Our nation had fought in the Great War, World War I, roughly 101 years ago, emerging victorious, expelling invaders, and securing our independence. The war left us poor, but filled with pride. Even those who had lost fathers or husbands in the conflict carried a bittersweet joy in their hearts. Our district was home to many veterans of the War of Independence, each marked by their sacrifices. Some had lost a leg, others an arm. Some had lost both, while others carried shrapnel in their bodies or had lost their sight. Our small town bore the vivid scars of the struggle for freedom. The families of martyrs and the veterans themselves were a source of deep pride for our community. Widows and orphaned children often had no income, and many veterans could not work due to their injuries, yet they never asked for help. The townspeople honored their dignity with silent generosity. No one offered aid openly, as it might wound their pride. Instead, whenever we bought food or clothing for our homes, an identical portion was quietly sent to a martyr's family, or a veteran's household, wrapped in handkerchiefs or placed in baskets, left with a simple, "This must be yours," before the giver slipped away. No one boasted about their generosity. "I sent this," or "I helped with that." And the recipients never spoke of their needs. It was an unspoken bond that held us together. To protect the veterans from cruel nicknames tied to their injuries, the townspeople gave them affectionate titles: Teacher Enver, Seven-Beater Ali, Invisible Kazim. Among them was a man everyone called New Year's Sergeant. No one knew his real name. The title was all we used. This veteran had lost nearly half his body, his right eye, right arm, and right leg. The right side of his face bore a deep scar, likely from a burn, leaving a hollow where flesh once was. His appearance was daunting, yet he was beloved. Homeland, he'd say, and little else. Poor as he was, he never failed to offer children a piece of candy, a walnut, or some small treat whenever he saw us. New Year's Sergeant spoke little, but his kindness spoke volumes. My family was the most educated in the district. My father, uncle, and grandfather were teachers, and my great-grandfather had been a scribe. My siblings and I, 4 of us, attended the local primary and middle schools, the only schools in our town. My older brother and sister studied in the provincial capital, where the high school was located. My cousin, Rusuhi, had just returned from France, where he'd gone for higher education after finishing high school. Whenever Rusuhi came home for holidays, it was like a festival in our family. We'd gather around him, young and old, sitting in a circle, listening eagerly to his stories. His tales of France felt like fairy tales, exotic, distant, almost magical. "Oh, France," we'd sigh. "What a wondrous place. To share the same world as France is an honor." Rusuhi's stories captivated us, though sometimes they seemed too fantastical to be true. But Rusuhi was changing. He began eating with a knife, cutting his food in a way that mesmerized us children. We'd try to mimic him in secret, only to fumble clumsily. My father and uncle weren't pleased with these new habits, though we didn't understand why. Rusuhi taught us to say good morning and good afternoon, instead of the traditional Selamun Aleikum, which my father and uncle stubbornly held on to. When winter settled in, Rusuhi returned abruptly from France, having failed to earn his diploma. "They didn't give me a degree," he admitted, but they sent back a different Rusuhi, a proper Frenchman. He said France hadn't given him a diploma, but had made him a Russie, a true French gentleman. His new mannerisms fascinated us, even if they unsettled the elders. One cold evening, as we sat under the warm glow of our gas lamp, Rusuhi turned to my father. "Uncle," he said, "New Year's coming. What are your plans?" My father shrugged. "What's there to plan? It comes, it goes. May God make it auspicious." Rusuhi pressed on. "But it's the new year. Don't you want to celebrate? It'd be a nice change for the kids." We children chimed in, pleading, "Please, Father, please, let's celebrate New Year." We didn't know what New Year was, but if Rusuhi, fresh from France, said it was good, it had to be wonderful, especially if it was celebrated in a place as marvelous as France. My father and uncle were reluctant, but our enthusiasm wore them down. "Fine," they said. "Let the kids have fun." They didn't see harm in it, so they let Rusuhi take charge. Preparations began in earnest. The women of the house dove into action, baking baklava and burek, pulling out the finest clothes from storage, and scrubbing the house spotless. Everything was done under Rusuhi's guidance. My father and uncle remained skeptical but stayed silent, seeing no real harm. Then Rusuhi asked my aunt, his mother, "Mama, where will we find a turkey?" He'd taken to calling her Mama since returning from France, which we found endlessly charming. "Turkey," she replied. "Is that a must?" Rusuhi insisted. "Mama, no turkey, no New Year. Let the kids taste turkey for once." In our district, we called turkeys kulak, and my aunt sighed, "Where am I supposed to find a kulak?" Rusuhi winked. "You'll figure it out, dear Mama." Word spread through the neighborhood. One neighbor asked another, and soon a turkey was found. Some neighbors, curious, asked, "Can't we use a chicken instead?" "No," came the reply. "Rusuhi says in France, New Year means turkey." "What's this New Year thing anyway?" they wondered. "It's France's holiday, I guess. Rusuhi knows best. He's been there." Others chimed in, "He's seen France, so he knows better than us." The news of our family's New Year celebration spread across the district like wildfire. Neighbors asked, "What's this New Year?" and were told, "It's something they do in France. Rusuhi says so, and he's seen it." When the night arrived, we children donned our new clothes, tied ribbons in our hair, and stepped into the street. The neighborhood kids lined up to watch us, their eyes wide with curiosity. We felt like royalty. After all, we were the only ones in town celebrating New Year, a privilege brought to us by Rusuhi, the only man in the district who'd seen France. Normally, we'd paint our hands with henna for holidays, but Rusuhi forbade it. "Henna? That's for Eid. This is New Year. Paint your nails. Dress up." None of us knew what nail polish was, but we didn't dare ask, lest we reveal our ignorance. As dusk fell, neighbors peeked in, pretending to drop by for trivial reasons, their eyes darting to our festive preparations. We swelled with pride. Ours was the first family to celebrate New Year like a grand holiday. My father and uncle returned from evening prayers at the mosque, and we gathered under the lamp, buzzing with excitement. Rusuhi had crafted something called tombala from painted cardboard. A game he said was called something else in France, but tombala in Istanbul. The table overflowed with food, burek, baklava, sweets, enough to feed countless families. "Look at this feast," my aunt marveled. "Think of how many poor could eat from this." Rusuhi waved her off. "Mama, forget the poor tonight. Enjoy yourself." Laughter filled the room as we played games, told jokes, and shared stories. Rusuhi regaled us with tales of France's New Year, dancing, drinking, revelry until dawn. "I didn't bring alcohol," he said, "because Father would disapprove, or I'd have shown you a real French celebration." Suddenly, he stood, raised his glass of sherbet, threw back his head and shouted, "Yay! Long live the New Year!" Before we could join in, a thunderous banging at the door froze us in place. It wasn't a knock. It was as if someone meant to break the door down. I was mid-bite, a piece of turkey in my hand, when the sound stopped me cold. Rusuhi stood motionless, glass still raised. My uncle, the first to recover, rushed to the door. "What's wrong? Who's there?" he called. Before he could finish, New Year's sergeant stormed in, his cane thudding against the floor. I'd never seen him so terrifying. His scarred face was red with rage, his single eye blazing. Turning to my father, he roared, "Teacher! You're no teacher! You'd make a fine traitor to the homeland!" My father, stunned, stammered, "What are you saying, Sergeant? Calm down. Tell us what's wrong." The sergeant spat. "Calm down. Sit. I'll never sit in this house again, nor speak to those who do. I'd rather the enemy had taken my other half than see you celebrating the infidels' holiday like this. You'd have done better to spit in my face or insult me." Rusuhi, still holding his glass, tried to defend himself. "What's wrong with this? Are we infidels now? A year is ending, a new one beginning. That's all we're celebrating?" The sergeant ignored him, his fury fixed on my father and uncle. "You're teachers. Don't you tell your students the War of Independence was won not with guns, but with faith? And now you let this boy, who learned nothing in France but to raise a glass to cheer, bring their ways here? He couldn't bring back knowledge, inventions, or medicine, just their holiday. The infidels give no useful diploma, no remedy for our pains, just their celebrations." My uncle tried to explain. "We never celebrated New Year before, but Rusuhi saw it in France, and we thought a little change wouldn't hurt." The sergeant's voice trembled with rage. "Change? You think this is harmless? Today you celebrate like this. Tomorrow your children will plant Christmas trees, leave gifts beneath them, and in 50 years they'll dance and gamble, losing all sense of who they are. This poison creeps in slowly, and you'll never escape it. Today it's tombala with paper. In 50 years it'll be full-blown gambling. Today you celebrate among family. In 50 years your daughters and brides will dance shamelessly." Rusuhi snapped, "Father's here. Why are you interfering?" The sergeant turned on him, his voice sharp as a blade. "While you prance on 2 legs, I hobble to the outhouse with a cane. While you comb your hair like a Frenchman, people flee at the sight of me. You celebrate their holidays, but they attacked us on ours, slaughtering women, children, and babies, without mercy. Do you know why they call me New Year's Sergeant?" His voice broke, and for the first time I saw a man cry, with his single eye, sobbing loudly, his cries echoing in the room. "I fought 5 years," he began, "through snow, hunger, and cold. I thought only of God, homeland, and Islam. I never complained, never thought of my own children, only of our faith and nation. I was captured by the French. Do you know what I saw? They killed Muslims most on their holidays and during Ramadan. On their New Year, they used me as a servant in their fortress. They dressed me in a red and white costume, a hat on my head, and called me Monsieur. I didn't understand until later. They'd made me look like their Santa Claus. That night, they set a lavish table, just like yours, with wine and feasting. Then they ordered me to open a door and bring out one for each of them. I opened it and saw 6 Turkish girls, barely 17 or 18, stripped naked, trying to cover themselves, their eyes streaming with tears. They begged, "Monsieur, please don't let them harm us." I realized they thought I was one of them, because of the costume. Everything went dark. I turned, grabbed the first French officer, pulled the pin on his grenade, and threw myself at him. I don't remember what happened next. The officer died, but the explosion took half my body, the half facing the enemy. They thought I was dead and tossed me aside. One of those girls who escaped carried me to her home and nursed me back to life. I never saw her face, but her grandfather sent me food and medicine. While I slept, someone would enter, treat my wounds, and leave supplies. That's why they call me New Year's Sergeant. He turned to my father. When I heard a teacher's house was celebrating New Year, I didn't believe it. But seeing this French wannabe with his glass raised, I felt struck down. I'd rather have lost my other half than witness this. He left, his cane echoing in the silence. That was the first and last New Year we celebrated in our family. 40 years later, his words proved true. What began as a simple festivity has become a full Christian holiday, complete with cut trees, gifts under them, and rampant drinking. New Year's Sergeant gave half his body to protect Muslim girls from being used in such celebrations. We, his children and grandchildren, now embrace the very festivities he fought against, drifting far from our national and spiritual values. Will you forgive us, heroic New Year's Sergeant? Forgive us, please. This story was told by the late Aishi Gonin in 1998. Let's reflect briefly. There's value in foreign cultures. Science, technology, and medicine can be taken from anywhere, east or west, without harming one's faith. As the prophet said, "Wisdom is the lost property of the believer. He takes it wherever he finds it." This doesn't harm anyone's piety. But adopting cultural practices, not just technology, can clash with religious sensitivities. Imagine a bottle of ink. A few drops of water won't change it. It still writes clearly. Add more water, and the ink weakens, barely legible. Add too much, and it's no longer ink. You can neither write nor read with it. Similarly, we should take what's useful. Science, technology, solutions for our era's needs, but steer clear of cultural practices that dilute our identity. We must be mindful of whom we resemble. A striking example comes from Professor Fritz Neumark, a German scholar who fled Hitler's persecution in 1933 and taught at Istanbul University's faculties of economics and law until 1952, later becoming rector at Frankfurt University. When he visited Turkey, he was asked, "Why does Europe hate us? What's the reason for their eternal enmity?" His response was candid. "Let me be frank. Europeans don't love Muslims and never will. Their hatred, rooted in centuries of the Church's anti-Islamic teachings, is ingrained in their very cells. You're Muslims, and even if you weren't, they'd fear you as their historical nightmare. You're their eternal enemy, because for at least 400 years, the Seljuks conquered Anatolia, and the Ottomans dominated Central Europe and the Balkans, turning Crusader armies into dust. They brought civilization and humanity to us, and Europe faced the danger of becoming Muslim. If you return to your true identity, Europe's prosperity and civilization would crumble. That's why you'll always be their enemy. Had the Seljuks, and especially the Ottomans, not sacrificed everything for Islam, it would be confined to the Hijaz today. Even Wahhabism was seeded by agents of the British Colonial Office. The West has used its agents to divert Islam into deviant beliefs, yet they could never break the Ottoman spirit, which continued to embody the age of felicity. The Church harbors this grudge for these reasons. 2 years later, in 1935, at a missionary conference in Jerusalem, Samuel Zwemer, head of the missionary organization, spoke at the opening, "We don't ask you to make Muslims Christians. Your task is to distance them from Islam. Let them not wear crosses, attend churches, or be baptized, but live like Christians under the guise of modernity. Make them a generation that doesn't know their God or prophet. Strip them of their faith, values, and traditions. If you succeed, you'll pave the way for their nations to become colonies. Create a generation that doesn't recognize their faith or prophet. They'll chase comfort, laziness, and wealth, living only for their desires. They'll learn only to fulfill their whims, spend their wealth on pleasure, and even in the highest positions, remain slaves to their passions. They'll do anything to satisfy their desires, even sacrificing everything. Such people are easily bought for imperialist aims. Only when you've reduced Muslims to this state will you have succeeded as missionaries." The Quran warns in Surah Al-Ma'idah 551, "O you who believe, do not take Jews and Christians as allies. They are allies of one another. Whoever among you takes them as allies is one of them. Indeed, Allah does not guide the wrongdoing people." In Surah Al-Fatiha, recited at least 4 times daily in our prayers, we ask, "Guide us to the straight path, the path of those you've blessed, not those who've earned your wrath or gone astray." As the saying goes, you become like those you emulate. Since the time of the Prophet's companions, Muslims have never been loved by those we admire. I won't prolong this or add more commentary. You've understood the message. May Allah guide us all.